science and technology, social justice, and more. Let's tackle the tough questions and expose the truth. The Issues on Voice of the People Television, Mondays to Fridays, 8 to 9 p.m. The Issues. Don't just react, understand.
Behind every broken desk lies a broken promise. Education shapes the nations. But who is asking the right questions? Introducing Edu Dialogue, the show that goes beyond the surface, exposes the cracks, the corruption, and the silence in Nigeria's education system. Edu Dialogue, Saturdays, 3 p.m., only on VOP TV. We break the biggest stories, from missing funds to policy failures. We ask the tough questions and demand real answers. Edu Dialogue, this Saturday, 3 p.m. on Voice of the People Television.
We encourage you to click on the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are Voice of the People TV. Also follow us on all our social media platforms. We are at VOP TV Live. Visit our website www.vop.ng for fresh and trending news. Also watch us live on SLTV channel 264. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television.
Join us as we drive into the world of politics through insightful interviews with prominent political figures, both serving and former governors, ministers, senators, legislators, party chieftains, activists, and analysts. Get first-hand information into the decision-making processes that affect our daily lives. Highly engaging one-hour program that brings political discourse into focus.
I am Chukwuma Okoro.
Political Lens, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. Join us.
When I first heard VOP, I thought they were talking about me because I'm a voice-over personality. But no, this is Voice of the People TV, and you are riveted forever because this is the place to be.
Yo guys, your boy Chella. Shout out to VOP TV. I love you guys.
Salut, salut tout le monde. Suspect 95. Là, on est sur VOP TV. On passe un bon temps. J'espère que vous kiffez. On est au Afrima. On est ensemble. VOP TV.
Don't see me like a fool because I don't do giddy giddy giddy. VOP, you don't know Stoneware from Ghana representing live and living color. Yeah, Beam Nation President. Outside with it. Bless up.
Hello, this is Milo from Ivory Coast. Keep watch Voice of the People TV. Regardez la voix du peuple, la télévision de la voix du peuple. Que Dieu vous bénisse. À très bientôt. Love you so much.
Hi guys, what's up? This is Gaze Baba. I am watching VOP TV. Usually you be told to not touch the dial, but I tell you to touch the dial and increase the volume. Like, keep it locked. It's Afro Gospel. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shego Aronzo. You're watching VOP. Don't change the dial.
My Joe, fine girl. My Joe, fine babe.
Yes, don't touch the dial. This is me, Dr. Adewale Iba. Keep watching VOPT.
We go to bed empty hunger.
To the blaring horns of a hustling city, the loudest voices of the common man got a medium to be heard.
This particular administration, they were coming unprepared.
It's not a bad thing to renovate the president's lawn.
Through top-notch programming, unbiased reportage of news, sports, business, entertainment, and cultural documentaries, Voice of the People, 90.3 FM, became a symbol for 21st century media. And now, a new baby is born. Voice of the People Television, VOP TV, youthful, full of vigor and penchant for excellence in the continent's media space, exposing the wrongs, applauding the rights, dissecting the news without fear or favor, through factual and accurate stories and contents.
Corruption kills three things and makes a society.
Representing the interests of the people and giving them a voice. Voice of the People TV, is here to stay towards building a fair society. VOP TV, Voice of the People Television, truly a voice for the people.
Africa is on the move, a continent of rising voices, untold stories, and powerful transformations. From the streets of Lagos to the heart of Nairobi, from the mines of Congo to the tech labs of Cape Town, the African story is being written every day. Bold, dynamic, unstoppable. This is African News on Voice of the People Television. We don't just bring you the news. We analyze and bring you Africa's heartbeat, the politics that shapes our nations, the economies that drives our future, the cultures that defines who we are, the voice that must be heard. Africa News, Africa's voice, Africa's future. Where Africa speaks, the world listens.
What happens in the hush behind hangar doors? Who signs the papers that gamble with lives? Which truths were grounded before they even ever had wings? If you've ever buckled a seatbelt at 30,000 feet, if you've ever stared out of that tiny window and wondered who's really in control of the skies, it isn't just flight, it's power, it's politics, it's pressure sealed in steel. We're peeling back the clouds from runway risks to sky-high secrets. We're diving deep where most dare not to look. Aviation Scope, every Sunday at 7 p.m. only on Voice of the People TV. We don't just report, we reveal. We don't just ask, we uncover. Because when it comes to the skies, ignorance is turbulence. Aviation Scope, the sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning.
On Edu Dialogue, we bring you fresh ideas and conversations, shaping the future of learning in Nigeria and beyond.
In a world where power shifts with every headline.
In a nation full of questions.
In a world filled with noise, the truth needs a voice.
The policies that shapes our world and the economy that determines our future.
Every hour, every day, the grapevine keeps buzzing.
And together, we are committed to telling the stories that shape our world, because your voice is our focus.
Don't forget, our voice matters the most. Let us come together and share our concerns.
Welcome to the locker room, the home of football talk that matters. I am Jerry Arpeon. Join us every weekday, Monday to Friday at 5 p.m. Nigerian time, as we share the hot takes and hot debates in the exciting world of football. And joining me are the usual suspects, Ikechukwu and Mayowa, as we break down all the hot takes and everything that's happening in the football. Don't just watch football, live it with us. Catch us on the locker room and Voice of the People Television at 5 p.m. Nigerian time. And like I always say, if not 20 minutes off, with the sport.
Are you ready for the extraordinary? Something big is happening on your screen. Introducing VO.
Well, hello and welcome to the African News and Voice of the People Television. I am David Edwin. Before we begin the news, we would urge you to kindly visit our website. It is www.vop.ng for fresh and trending news stories. We begin the African news from Sudan, where Sudan has stated that any proposal to end the war with the Rapid Support Forces, that's the RSF, and achieve peace must take into consideration the country's supreme interest, Sudan's national security, full national sovereignty, unity of Sudan's territory, its institutions, and territorial integrity. In a statement, the Sudanese Foreign Ministry added that any proposal that does not consider such interests
would not be accepted by the government and therefore would not find its way to implementation. It also emphasized that Sudan is a sovereign state and takes its positions and decisions based on its supreme national interest. However, the ministry did not provide further details about the nature of the proposal. The United States senior advisor, Masad Bolus, had earlier proposed a five-pillar strategy to end the war in Sudan, calling for an immediate humanitarian truce and a transition to a civilian government to prevent what he described as institutional collapse. And from Sudan, we move straight to Zimbabwe, where the Constitutional Court of Zimbabwe has dismissed an application seeking to invalidate the Private Voluntary Organization Act 2025 and hold the president of Zimbabwe accountable for allegedly assenting to a law passed without proper public participation. It ruled that no constitutional bridge was established. The applicant, who had argued that public hearing in Harare and Masvingo had been disrupted, thereby preventing meaningful contribution on the bill, and claimed that this invalidated both the legislative process and the president's subsequent assent to the law. However, the ruling by 7 justices, led by Justice Rita Makaru, found that the applicants, Passionate Fuza and Jonah Wakura-Werawa, had not shown what the Zimbabwean parliament failed to fulfill its duties under Section 141 of the Constitution during the passage of the Act. According to the court, it was considered that no allegation had been made and proven against the second respondent that he had failed to fulfill a constitutional obligation and that the joinder was therefore incompetent. Still in Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwean community in South Africa has expressed concerns at the arrest and pending prosecution of Balamin Katunga Mugabe, the son of the late former President Robert Mugabe. Chairperson of the Zimbabwean community in South Africa, Ntobo Mbena, said the allegations were deeply troubling, adding that such belief that the son of the former president shot his worker was quite alarming and a sad thing for them. Wishing the injured person a speedy recovery, Mabhena urged the South African justice system to pursue this case to a logical end, adding that they expect the law to take its course. Katunga, 28 years of age, was arrested alongside another man following a shooting at a Heed Park residence in Johannesburg, in which a 23-year-old employee was critically injured. Both suspects had been charged with attempted murder and are expected to appear in court. And in South Africa has called on all United Nations member states to recognize Palestinian statehood and act in solidarity with Palestinian people. Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola told a meeting of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland, that the world cannot continue to appeal for an end to Israel's unlawful occupation, together with efforts to permanently displace the Palestinian people in Gaza and in the West Bank. He reiterated South Africa's unwavering support and solidarity with the Palestinian people. Lamola also said South Africa is concerned about attacks on the UN Special Rapporteur on occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, as well as special procedures mandates holders in general. According to him, special procedure mandates holders play a key role promoting and protecting human rights and they must be protected. Lamola added that South Africa is concerned about attacks on multilateralism, the unpredictable geopolitical dynamics, and the erosion of a rule-based international border. Moving on to other stories, Cameroon's military court has sentenced 3 soldiers to between 5 and 10 years in prison for their role in the killing of no fewer than 21 civilians in the country's Anglophone Northwest region. The court found them guilty of murder, arson, and destruction for the February 14, 2020 attack on the village of Ngabo. The soldiers and the Fulani militias killed civilians, including 13 children, and burnt homes in the incident described as a rare instance of Cameroon's government acknowledging the atrocities of its soldiers in the Anglophone regions, which have been racked by a separatist conflict for nearly 10 years. The authorities initially denied responsibility for the attack on Ngabo, but later backpedaled following international pressure and the findings of an investigation ordered by President Paul Biya. The case dragged on for 6 years after hearings were postponed multiple times. And from Cameroon, we move straight to Kenya, where Kenya's Commission on Administrative Justice has raised concerns over what it terms as excessive charges imposed on students and parents seeking access to senior secondary school placement results. In a letter to Principal Secretary of the State Department for Basic Education, Julius Bitok, the Commission said the 30 Kenyan shilling fee charged to access placement results via SMS is unaffordable for many families, describing it as a barrier to candidates transitioning to grade 10. The Ombudsman urged the State Department to spearhead negotiations with mobile service providers to lower the cost of accessing the results. It also noted that though an online portal exists as an alternative channel, the Ministry of Education had not provided adequate information to parents and students on how to use it and avoid additional SMS charges. Among others, the Commission further called on the State Department to develop mechanisms to ensure easier access to placement results. In another development, Kenya's Director of Public Prosecution at the DPP, Renson Ngonga, has attributed delays in prosecuting cases of police misconduct to slow and incomplete investigation by oversight and investigative agencies, particularly indicting the Independent Policing Oversight Authorities as the IPOA and the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, DCI. Nkonga said his office can only act after investigators have gathered sufficient evidence and forwarded complete files for review and prosecution. He noted that public outrage often targets the DPP, whether incidents involving police brutality or misconduct occur, yet responsibility for investigation lies with other agencies depending on the nature of the incidents. He stressed that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution operates at the final stage of the criminal justice process and cannot initiate trials without credible and well-documented investigations. Nkonga emphasized that prosecutions cannot be driven by public pressure alone, warning that weak evidence could undermine cases in courts and violate the rights of suspects. Moving on, in a move aimed at centralizing the oversight of donor funding programs, the Ugandan government has barred accounting officers across ministries, departments, and agencies from entering any governance-related agreement with development partners without prior cabinet approval. The directive was issued by the Secretary to the Treasury, Ramathan Gobi, through the second budget call circular, calling the finalization of ministerial policy statements and detailed revenue and expenditure estimates for the 2026-2027 financial year. According to Gobi, the Guardians is in line with the cabinet minutes, underscoring that the decision is binding on all government entities. The circular further provides that any financing proposals related to governance must first undergo structured consultative process involving key state institutions. Moving on to other stories, tension is escalating in Uganda's Nsowe Central Forest Reserve following violent clashes between licensed tree planting investors and groups of pastoralists accused of illegally occupying government forest land. The confrontation have reportedly led to widespread destruction of planted trees, assaults of workers, and property losses estimated at billions of shillings, covering roughly 4,635 hectares of Gomba district. Nsowe Forest had suffered heavy degradation over Nsowe Forest has suffered heavy degradation over the years due to pastoralist encroachment, including cattle grazing and clearing for farming. In 2017, the government, through the National Forestry Authority, allocated 2,885 hectares to private investors to restore the degraded forest with eucalyptus and pine trees. The remaining 1,750 hectares were allocated to 175 residents already living within the forest, each receiving 25 acres on condition that they plant trees. Since then, investors have planted trees on 2,308 hectares and continued with restoration activities. However, new groups of pastoralists, some allegedly from Rwanda, Gulu, Tanzania, Sango Bay, and neighboring districts such as Nyankwazi, have reportedly invaded the forest, cutting down young and mature trees, grazing cattle, and establishing temporary camps. Moving on, a Tunisian court has ordered the release of Ahmed Souab, a prominent lawyer and fierce critic of President Kais Saied, in a move the opposition hopes will pave the way for the release of other jailed opponents. Souab had been serving a 5-year jail term following his arrest and imprisonment last year. The court gave no reason for its decision at a hearing on Monday. Schwab's lawyers and family said he had recently been suffering health problems. His brother, Mungi, welcomed the development as very good news, hoping that it will be followed by the release of all unjustly imprisoned detainees. Schwab's arrest sparked widespread anger among political parties and civil society groups, which saw it as a dangerous escalation of authoritarianism in Tunisia. Souab is a retired administrative judge and lawyer who had repeatedly said the judiciary has lost its independence under President Kais Saied. You're still watching the African news right here on Voice of the People television. We'll go straight to the analysis segment of the news. And joining us now to make sense of these stories and more is a lawyer and a public affairs analyst and commentator in the studio, Mr. Darlington Agumo. A very good afternoon to you, sir, and thank you for joining the conversation this afternoon.
My pleasure, David. How are you?
I'm fine, very well. Thank you, Barrister. Thank you. And how are you doing as well?
Okay.
Also joining us virtually is Barrister Edward Okwaro Matakinye. He is a human rights activist in Uganda as well. A very good afternoon to you, Barrister Edward, and thank you for joining the conversation as well this afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, David, and Senior Counsel at the studio.
All right, then let's start off this conversation from the studio here. Well, interestingly, there is a conversation about the level of arrest by the presidency, well, allegedly now by the presidency, and the concerns of the fact that as it stands, opposition figures are saying these are political arrests to silence opposition in Tunisia. What do you make of this?
Whenever a dictator is in office, the first thing he is likely to do is to silence opposition. They don't want anybody to remind them of their shortcomings. And so, I am not surprised with what we are hearing about Said. And is that, you know, when a leader has failed in office, he wouldn't want you to criticize him. He wouldn't want him to expose him. He wouldn't want you to tell the whole world what he's doing. And so anybody who is likely to do that is an enemy and must be put in prison. That is how dictators are known. That is their hallmark. And so when this news is coming out from Tunisia, I wasn't surprised.
So looking at the fact that Ahmed Chouad has been, a court in Tunisia has ordered for his release. Some have said that this clearly looks like a cynical ploy by the president to ease international pressure, while of course keeping Tunisia on the path of the authoritarianism that he's been accused of over time. What do you also share this sentiment?
Yeah, they should sustain the pressure on him to do the right thing. Releasing one person out of many is not enough. The opposition and the human rights activists in that country, they should not rest on their oars because one lawyer has been released. Others should mount pressure on these tyrants to release other detainees so that democracy can thrive in Tunisia. It's not enough to release one person. If you release one, you must release all.
All right, then let's take this conversation to Uganda. Well, Barrister Edward, this conversation about the release of this lawyer who have already been serving a 5-year jail term following his arrest and imprisonment last year because, hey, he's been sentenced and he's been serving that term. But some have said that the judiciary in Tunisia is clearly acting from the pressure of critics. And the question now would be, why release this young man because of his health crisis? Has the rule of law been reduced to political expediencies, or are we seeing some act of what I would say a plea on the part of the family of this man?
Thank you, David. What I can say in this situation, you have seen several illustrations like this in Africa, where actually you oppose the ruling government, you become an enemy. So democracy is actually on trial. Democracy is undermined in most of our countries in Africa. So I would actually say this is already a rape of a constitution. The constitution is defied in this case. You have a right in most countries like Uganda, you are supposed to be produced to court within 24 hours for actually now be tried in the court. But in cases where you get the government is in fear, the government is actually has actually captured institutions. So there is no wonder that even the judiciary is actually acting on the command of the ruler. That is now the situation.
Well, I'm still going to stay with you, Barrister Edward, because the civil society in Tunisia has clearly said that Tunisia is at the risk of sliding back into the pre-2011 authoritarianism rule, which, of course, is something that they are trying to fight against. But from your perspective, is there a possibility that the gains of the Arab Spring is not visible afterwards? Because this, again, is a conversation that has been ongoing. Should these kind of arrests continue?
It takes a minute a country to actually fall down in situations where you get bad leaders. In this case, probably this is what Tunisia is facing right now. So it is my view that Tunisia is actually going under a trial in democracy. Has to test the constitution. Tunisia has to test the judiciary. The parliament should come up and actually now look at what is needed in Tunisia. So, in short, David, I see the democracy, the type of rule which was actually fought, getting back to that.
Okay. All right, then let me bring the conversation back to the studio here. Well, interestingly as it stands, similar patterns of jailing critics was, of course, discovered in the Ben Ali's regime, of course, which rarely, of course, release some of these detainees. Now, the Kais Saied era of Tunisia occasionally releases opponents under pressure. Do you think this is a suggestive, tactical flexibility style to not be equated to the Ben Ali regime? Because some have said that Tunisia seemed not to have learned from the Arab Spring era.
I think so. I think so because you know, some dictators, they thrive on intimidation. The man believed that if he released these detainees in piecemeal, maybe after a certain pressure, he will release a sort of detainees. And then after some more pressure, he will do so. They will now see him as a listening president.
So that would definitely improve the image of Tunisia.
Exactly. In fact, his own image. Because he's not even thinking of the image of his own image. So that the international community will see him as a benevolent dictator and all that. But it is not enough. In a thriving democracy, this thing shouldn't happen. You don't imprison opponents. You don't imprison critics. If not, the whole Americans would have been in prison because of Donald Trump. I don't think we are even talking here in Africa. You need to listen to what Americans are telling Donald Trump. With all his bravado abroad, with all his showmanship abroad. At home, America used to tell him all manner of things, but he doesn't care. It's a democracy. That is what it means. But in Africa, criticize one president, he will turn into a tiger and swallow everybody.
Now, as it stands, is there the possibility that, according to the presidency, this is a major crackdown on dissent? Because you would recall Shoaib's arrest last year, of course, was widely seen as the president's crackdown on dissent, which they said was undermining the security of the country at the time. But this level of arrest was consistent and consistently seen with arrest of opposition figures, journalists, and of course, activists. On the part of the presidency now, my question is, the crackdown on dissent and of course restoring law and order in the country, is this justified by arresting oppositions, journalists, and activists as well?
Under the rule of law, it can never be justified. Arresting people because of criticizing you is the wrong move in democracy. Because democracy thrives on criticism. You cannot claim to be the perfect man when you're a leader. You must listen to critics. And if you refuse to do so, then you are turning into another thing. All those things that he's doing in Tunisia, he's just wasting his time. In fact, he is rubbishing his image, because stories will be told later. Like we are discussing it here in Nigeria. I'm sure all over Africa, other channels of the media are talking about it. Is that a compliment? The answer is no. So the earlier you do the right thing, the better. It will not remove anything from you to listen to what? Opposition critics. It will not remove anything. So instead of you to listen to them and then take it in your stride, to jail all of them and all that, you are creating problem for yourself, very big problem. That's just the truth.
All right, then. Well, as it stands, the opposition figures in jail presently in Tunisia is increasing by the day, and hopefully the voice of the people might, prevail in the end.
And this may attract the attention of the military somehow, because they have been telling you, we don't want coup in Africa, we don't want coup in Africa. By the time this thing will continue, the military will become uncomfortable, and you know what will follow.
But as it stands, do you think that the military is not even involved in this?
That's what I'm saying.
With the president?
Yes, I know that, yes. But then, a section of the military, because all of them cannot be in bed with the president. A section of the military may be disgruntled, and they may use this as a weapon, as an excuse. And the majority of the people will welcome them whenever they come.
Well, that is almost inevitable, because the parliament has been disbanded in the country. So ruling by decree, anything is almost possible. Let me take the conversation to Uganda. Well, I want to talk about a story emanating from your country where centralizing the oversight of donor-funded program, the Ugandan government has barred accounting officers across ministries, departments, and agencies from entering any governance-related agreement with development partners without prior cabinet approval. Well, Barrister Edward, what's your position with this? Some have said that is Uganda's centralization of donor oversight a genuine push for sovereignty, or a calculated move to choke off donor support for governance reforms and civil society activism?
Yeah, obviously, you would actually relate to that, because it is Uganda was just under the check, and going through a check of elections which has just ended January. Yeah. And you saw what came out of it. So the government is a bit careful to expose itself in most of the areas. As we talk right now, in fact, the elections in Uganda are not yet accepted by all the world partners, because Uganda is still questioned on how the elections were conducted. So one of the areas, obviously, the government is very much careful is the issue of finances. To tell you for sure, the partners who have been investing in Uganda heavily are not happy with what expired in January. So this is also making the government to tighten its belt, because the finances may be used against the government. So that's why the government is putting such restrictions. So it is political. It is not something which is actually new to Uganda alone. Most of the governments in Africa, the dictators are always very much careful when it reaches such a level where you see your partners are supporting opposition.
Oh, well, let me bring this conversation back to the studio here. Well, question that is really got in my head right now is, why does the Ugandan government fear centralized donor engagement? Does this really expose insecurity about its governance record and accountability structure?
So that the amount will not be captured. That is just the simple truth. They don't want the amount to be captured because of the misuse they have that has been involved in this money. If the whole money is put in one basket, of course you will capture it. Then you now ask question, where did all this money go? Who used it? What did you use it for? But when it is scattered, of course you cannot be able to capture the whole amount. That's what is playing out there. And all African leaders play these tricks. They wouldn't tell you how much foreign donors are bringing in. They will never tell you because of the misuse that they want to put it to. They will never allow you. Some of this money, some go into their own pockets. So do you want him to account for the money he put in his pocket? Do you want him to account for it? That is what happened. There's no other excuse.
So would this directive trigger donor flights? I mean, Uganda being isolated and underfunded as well.
Of course, yes. It will attract attention. So they will try somehow to cover it up and then reassure the donor agencies and all that. They might even put up a phantom project and tell you this is where they put it and all that. But was that the purpose? Most times when donor agencies give you money, it is targeted at a project. And so when you are not ready to pursue that project, you are going to misuse the money. And when they ask you, you now put up one excuse or the other, just to confuse them and divert their attention.
So as it stands, should this trigger donor flights and the economy is underfunded, or some part of the economy is underfunded, how much of an impact would this have on the Ugandan people?
They don't care. David, why do you think Africa is underdeveloped? Most of the money are in foreign banks and all that. David, half of the money of Africa are in foreign accounts, no thanks to their leaders. If you should repatriate all the money that leaders have stolen from Africa, Africa will be a paradise. That's just the simple truth. So they wouldn't want such things to be exposed. They secretly do business with this money and all that, and then keep it abroad.
All right, then let me take this conversation to Uganda. Well, Barrister Edward, as it stands now, the government of your country tightening grip on donor governance. Some have said that this is marking a major beginning of a broader trend in Africa, because this is just like Barrister Aguma also said here. There is the conversation surrounding the fact that some of these governments are weaponizing sovereignty to silence reforms. What's your position with this as well?
Yeah, very true. The government is trying its best to silence the so-called partners because, ideally when the project has started, just as Council has said in our studio, that money is supposed to go directly to support that project. But when you bring issues like you should have books, check the books first before it is dispersed. Now it starts a questioning yourself. The government has failed in most of the projects. So we don't know how the government will now manage even these donor funds. Yes, the government should have accountability of every money which comes to which enters to the central bank. That is true. And we know this money is channeled through a very good open and transparency means. So you can still, as a government, get the information. So this one is totally aimed in drawing some kind of lines on the issues of actually controlling whatever is happening in the country. There is a lot of issues concerning even the person who was elected recently is not safe. It feels like he's not safe. The son is not also feeling safe. That's why you see the issue any kind of a statement. So I believe the intentions are not good for Ugandans. The intentions are just to try and now try to cover the corruption which is too much rampant in the country.
All right, then. Let me just stay with you and, of course, move up to another conversation before we just wrap this up, maybe in 1 minute. The South African government has called on the United Nations member states to recognize Palestinian statehood and act in solidarity with Palestinian people. Well, Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola told in a meeting of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland, that the world cannot continue to appeal for an end to Israel's unlawful occupation, an end to the ongoing genocide, together with efforts to permanently displace the Palestinian people. What do you make of this consistent vocal nature of the South African government, particularly in the part of the Palestinians, as against Israel? A move that Washington is not finding funny afterwards.
If the process is followed and so that the request is so much and dire, I believe we actually feel recognition is something which should be done as per the law. Now, if it is it's done in the right procedures, these people are to be recognized, then I don't see any situation. But also, we look at the security part of it. It may bring issues. That is how I look at it.
All right, then let me bring it back to the studio. Implications of this statement. Some have said Washington is already not in good business with South Africa, but Pretoria is still consistently talking and asking the UN to take a major stance as concerning the statehood of Palestinians. What's your position with this?
The only thing that is driving the consistency from South Africa is their experience with apartheid. What South Africa went through in apartheid, they're liking it to what Israel is doing to Palestinians in Gaza. So when they remember what they went through and what they suffered, they are now in solidarity with the people of Palestinians.
But some have said that this is oversimplifying the comparison here.
In what way?
Well, in the fact that the Israel-Palestinian conflict might just not be the same toll with the apartheid that South Africa saw.
That's what I'm telling you. I said they're liking it too. Because during apartheid, yes, we know that it was more horrendous in South Africa. But they're liking it to what they went through.
Okay.
There is no other explanation for you to occupy another person's land and then impose your will on that person. You are the one managing everything. You don't allow them to be free. You don't allow them to do things that, and this is a country that's supposed to be a sovereign nation. And if you go to the history of this thing proper, the Palestinians were there before the Israelites came in. And so there is every reason for the whole world, not just South Africa, the whole world to come in solidarity with the people of Palestine so that there will be peace for once. There should be peace for once. After all, if you check the size of this place we are talking about, yes, they can make a deal and then accommodate each other and still live in peace.
All right, then. Because of our time, really, this is where we have to draw anchor on the analysis segment of the African News. We've been talking with Darlington Agomo, a lawyer and public and political affairs analyst and commentator. Thank you so very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Also, all the way from Uganda, joined us virtually, Barrister Edward Okparo Matakinye, a human rights activist and also business associate. Thank you so very much for being here as well.
Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
You too. We'll take a very short break right now. When we return, more stories on the African news and business. Sports will be up next. Busy stay. Glad to have you back. It is still the African News right here in Voice of the People Television. Now to more stories. Sudan's Kordofan University said its campus in El Obeid city sustained heavy damage after drones that it said belonged to the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces RSF struck the facility. In a statement, the university's media office said the attack targeted buildings within the central campus complex, in El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan State, causing extensive damage to the infrastructure. The Emergency Lawyers Association and local right groups had condemned the strike and held the RSF responsible, describing it as part of an escalating pattern of attacks on civilian sites. It said that targeting education of institutions constitutes a violation of international humanitarian law, stressing that assaults on universities undermine the right to education and threaten students' future. And from that story, we'll move straight to talking business. The Ghana's finance ministry says the government has paid 10 billion cedis, about $910 million in interest under its domestic debt exchange program. It stated that the payment marks the sixth coupon settlement since a restructuring began as the country works to emerge from its deepest economic crisis in a generation. In a statement, the ministry explained that the payment was intended to reassure both domestic and international investors, strengthening market confidence and supports the country's credit outlook, while also promising stability across the financial sector. It's added that the latest settlement is the second full cash coupon payment with no payment in kind component, which reflects improved fiscal capacity and a stronger sovereignty position. And from that particular story, we'll move straight to talking sports. Africa's biggest, brightest young football talents will converge on Maputo as the final of the prestigious school tournament takes center stage from April the 2nd to the 10th, 2026. The Confederation of African Football CAF flagship youth competition has rapidly grown into one of the continent's most significant grassroots platforms. And this year's final promises another thrilling chapter. Built for Mozambique's vibrant capital, the tournament will bring together the best school teams from across Africa, all battling for continental glory. Since inception, the championship has played a critical role in talent identification and youth development. Beyond the silverware, the tourney embodies CAF's broader mission to invest in grassroots global and nurture the next generation of professionals. And with that sports story, we've come to the end of African News right here on Voice of the People Television. Do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel. On YouTube, we're at Voice of the People TV, and on all other social media platforms, we are at VOP TV Live. Thank you so very much for being a part of this broadcast. I am David Edwin. You have a good afternoon.
In a world where truth is the ultimate power and opinions scream the loudest, it's time to wade through the noise.
Hunger no get tribe! Hunger no get religion!
And scan the human interest and trending topics that matter. Stay tuned to The Issues, your plug to the stories making the buzz, from politics to science and technology, social justice, and more. Let's tackle the tough questions and expose the truth. The Issues, on Voice of the People Television, Mondays to Fridays, 8 to 9 p.m. The Issues. Don't just react, understand.
Behind every broken desk lies a broken promise. Education shapes the nations. But who is asking the right questions? Introducing Edu Dialogue, the show that goes beyond the surface, exposes the cracks, the corruption, and the silence in Nigeria's education system. Edu Dialogue, Saturdays, 3 p.m. only on VOP TV. We break the biggest stories, from missing funds to policy failures. We ask the tough questions and demand real answers. Edu Dialogue, this Saturday, 3 p.m. on Voice of the People Television.
To know the happenings in the maritime sector, join us on the program Maritime Frontiers on VOP TV as we discuss key areas in the maritime sector, from aquaculture, maritime transportation, maritime labor regulation, oil and gas exploration, ferry and passenger insurance, marine pollution and prevention, port operations, and lots more. Maritime Frontiers, exploring Nigeria's blue economy. Do you want your voice to be heard? Do you know that you matter in the scheme of things? The People's Voice, the show where ordinary citizens take center stage as we discuss the biggest stories that affect you and I. With you in mind, we facilitate lively discussions, debates, and interviews on the topics that matter most to you and I, from social justice to economic empowerment, education to healthcare, governance, and more, tackling tough topics and amplifying your voice. Join the conversation and make your voice count. The People's Voice. Make your voice count. The red carpets, awards, the razzmatazz, music, fashion, interviews, and more. Spotlight on Voice of the People Television. Let's feed you with all the juicy stories in the global entertainment space, bringing you the glitz and glamour as it is hot. Stay tuned to Spotlight, 1 p.m. Monday to Friday. Spotlight on VOP TV. Entertainment like never before.
Nnamdi Azikiwe, popularly known as Zik, was a prominent Nigerian nationalist and the first president of Nigeria. He was born on November 16, 1904 in Zungeru, which was then part of the British Protectorate of Northern Nigeria.
In defense of my honor and with due deference to those concerned, I submit.
Azikiwe played a significant role in the fight for Nigeria's independence from British colonial rule. He was one of the founding members of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC, a political party that advocated for self-governance and represented the interests of the Nigerian people. Under Azikiwe's leadership, the NCNC gained widespread support, particularly in the eastern region of Nigeria. He was known for his eloquent and powerful oratory skills, which helped him rally the masses and inspire them to fight for their rights. In 1963, Nigeria gained independence and Azikiwe became the country's first indigenous Governor General. He later served as the President of Nigeria from 1963 till 1966.